Mabuhay! This is Jason L. Grijaldo, and today I will discussing to you different terminologies related to measurement and evaluation in physical education. And now, are you ready? Let's start it. So first term is alternative assessment. So what is alternative assessment? Alternative assessment is referred to as performance test or authentic assessments. It is used to determine what students can and cannot do, in contrast to what they do or do not know. In other words, an alternative assessment measures applied proficiency more than it measures knowledge. And the best example of this is portfolio. Next term is assessment. So what is assessment? Assessment is the systematic basis for making inferences about the learning and development of the students. It is the process of defining, selecting, deciding, collecting, and analyzing, interpreting, using information to increase students' learning and development. For short, it is evaluating the students or what they have learned in a specific topic. So next term is assessment for learning. So let's define what is this. So, assessment for learning is an approach to teaching and learning that creates feedback which is then used to improve students' performance. Students become more involved in the learning process and from this gain confidence in what they are expected to learn and to what standard. So that is assessment for learning. Another term related to measurement and evaluation in physical education is the assessment steps. So what are those assessment steps? First is clearly define and identify the learning outcomes. Second, select appropriate assessment measures and assess the learning outcomes. The third one is analyze the results of the outcomes assessed. And the last one, adjust or improve programs following the results of the learning outcomes assessed. Next to define is authentic assessment. So what is authentic assessment? It is an idea of using creative learning experiences to test students' skills and knowledge in realistic situations. Authentic assessment measures students' success in a way that's relevant to the skills required of them once they have finished your course or degree program. So, authentic assessment is assessing the experiences of the students with authenticity and validity. Example of this are performance of the skills, demonstrating use of particular knowledge, simulation or role plays, and studios portfolios. Next word is checklists. Checklist is an assessment tools that set out specific criteria which educators and students may use to gauge skill development or progress. Checklists set out skills, attitudes, strategies, and behaviors for evaluation and offer ways to systematically organize information about a student or group of students. So, checklist is used by teacher to evaluate or monitor the attitudes, the skills, and the behaviors of his or her students. So next word to define is criterion reference assessment. So criterion reference assessment is a process of evaluating the students against a set of pre-specified qualities or criteria without reference to the achievement of others. So, criterion reference assessment is assessing the students according to his or her own learning without comparing to others. Next term is event task. So what is event task? It is a way of organizing tasks by teacher and students for them to know what they're going to do in that specific day. That is event tasks. Next term is formal assessments. Formal assessments are the systematic database tests that measures what and how will the students have learned. Formal assessments determine the student's proficiency or mastery of the content and can be used for comparisons against certain standards. So, formal assessment is an assessment where to assess the student's learning about the content of the topic. The example of these are standardized test, criterion reference test, norm reference test, achievement test, and aptitude tests. So before we go into the next term, let's take a pause for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and breathe. So are you ready for the next term? The next term is formative assessment. What is formative assessment? It refers to a wide variety of methods that teachers use to conduct in process evaluations of students' comprehension, learning needs, and academic progress during a lesson, unit, or course. In other words, formative assessment are for learning, while summative assessments are of learning. So, formative assessment is an assessment conducted during a lesson or a unit. That is formative assessment. So let's move on to the next term, which is grades. So what is grades? A grade in education can mean either a teacher's evaluation of a student's work or a student's level of educational progress. In other words, grades is a product of a student's performance in a whole duration of a quarter or a school year. Go to the next term, which is informal assessments. So informal assessments are those spontaneous form of assessments that can easily be incorporated in a day-to-day classroom activities and that measures the student's performance and progress. Informal assessments are content and performance driven. Examples of these are checklists, portfolio, observation, rating scale, time sampling, event sampling, and anecdotal records. Next term is journals. So what is journals? It is a collection of notes, observations, thoughts, and other relevant materials built up over a period of time and usually accompanies a period of study, a placement experiences, or fieldwork. Your learning journal is a personal to you and will reflect your personality and experience. So journals are used for us to collect our thoughts, our observations, and our learning day by day. Next term related to measurement in evaluation in physical education is the norm reference assessment. So what is norm reference assessment? It is a type of standardized test that compares the student's performance to one another. Next term to define is observation. So what is observation? It is a frequently used term in educational programs. Teacher candidates observe and are observed multiple times over the course of their program. For our purposes, observation means careful, thoughtful noticing of work of the classroom, both what teachers does and says, and what students do and say. and it can be done through teaching and learning process. That is observation. Without further ado, let's define what is peer assessment. Peer assessment involves students taking responsibility for assessing the work of their peers against set assessments criteria. This makes peer assessment an important component of assessment for learning, rather than simply a means of measuring performance. So, peer assessment also can be done through student to student and teacher to teacher. The term is performance assessment. So what is performance assessment? Performance assessment, also known as alternative or authentic assessment. It is a form of testing that requires students to perform a task rather than select an answer from a ready-made test. So, performance assessment is assessing the student's performance and skills rather than to answer a paper and pencil test. Next to define is portfolio. A student portfolio is a compilation of academic work and other forms of educational evidence assembled for a purpose of: first is evaluating coursework quality, learning progress, and academic achievement of the students. Second one is determining whether the students have met learning standards or other academic requirements for courses, grade level promotion, and graduation. The third one is helping students to reflect on their own academic goals and progress as learners. And the fourth one is creating a lasting archive of academic work, products, accomplishments, and other documentation. That is portfolio. Go on and let's define what is rating scale. So rating scale are used in performance management systems to indicate a student's level of performance or achievement. So rating scale is used for us teachers to rate and evaluate the performance of our students. Next word related to measurement and evaluation in physical education is the scoring rubric. So what is scoring rubric? It is typically an evaluation tool or set of guidelines used to promote the consistent application of learning expectations, learning objectives, or learning standards in the classroom, or to measure their attainment against a consistent set of criteria. So, scoring rubric is very important for us teachers to evaluate our students authentically and no bias. Let's move on and let's define the word self-assessment. Self-assessment or evaluation of oneself or one's actions and attitudes. In particular, of one's performance of a learning task considered in relation to an objective standard. So from the word self, we're going to assess ourselves in order for us to evaluate the progress of our performance. Next word to define related to measurement and evaluation is the skill tests. Skill test is an assessment used to provide an unbiased, validated evaluation of a candidate's ability to perform the duties in a specific skill. In other words, skill test is a tool for us teachers to evaluate the ability and the knowledge of our students in a specific area or skill like sports and other field. Let's move on and let's define what is student log. The student log was developed in order to improve the structure of clinical education. This log, students systematically register essential learning activities. Students record daily the patient problems with which they have been confronted and in with fashion. So, student log is very important for us teachers to monitor the health status of our students. The second to the last word related to measurement and evaluation in physical education is the summative assessment. So let's define what is summative assessment. Summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of the instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Summative assessment are often high stakes, which means that they have a high point value. Examples of summative assessments include a midterm examination or a final project. So don't forget that summative assessment is assessment conducted during the end of the unit. And we are in the last term related to measurement and evaluation and physical education. And the last term is traditional assessment. So let's define what is traditional assessment. So traditional assessments are tests taken with a paper and pencil that are usually true or false, matching type, or multiple choice. These assessments are easy to grade but only test isolated application, facts, or memorized data at lower level thinking skills. Learners must use more complex, higher order thinking skills. That is traditional assessments. It includes the paper and pencil tests. And those are terms related to measurement and evaluation and physical education. I hope you learned a lot and thank you for listening. God bless and bye!